everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive?
Absolutely, let's do it.
All right, so today we're diving into something that I think we've all experienced. You know how the instant some big news drops, everybody suddenly transforms into, like, a fortune teller, trying to predict the future.
Oh, yeah.
And we're all guilty of it, right? Like, we crave that instant analysis, that what's next, even when, let's be honest, things rarely shake out exactly like we initially think they would.
Right, exactly. And the thing is, I think a lot of that comes from this human need to kind of like impose order on chaos. You know, like when big news breaks, it disrupts our sense of normalcy. And so we try to find a way to understand it, get a grip on it, maybe even try to control it a little.
Oh, totally. And that makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, who wants to sit in a state of uncertainty? But that brings us to the whole point of this deep dive today. Our source material actually had a really interesting point, and I'm just going to quote it here. Many times, the first move after a news event is not the direction that holds. And wow, when you really think about it.
It's true, though, isn't it? I mean, it's like we grab onto those early narratives, those initial reactions, but they often end up being, well, not entirely accurate.
Exactly. So then why is that? Why are we so quick to jump to conclusions, and why are those first impressions so often off the mark? What's the deal with that?
Well, you know, there's a few things at play here. First off, you got to remember, when news first breaks, everybody's dealing with this fog of information. The first reports, usually incomplete, maybe even inaccurate, and it takes time for all the details to come to light, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, take, for example, the invasion of Iraq back in 2003. Remember, so much of the initial focus was on weapons of mass destruction, right? But as time went on, more information came out.
And it turned out that whole narrative,
yeah,
not quite as straightforward as it seemed initially, right?
Right, exactly. And that's just one example, right? I mean, there are countless others where the story we tell ourselves at the beginning is completely different from the way things actually play out.
And another factor here is just the sheer complexity of these situations.
Uh-huh.
Major news events, they don't happen in isolation, right? They set off this domino effect, this chain reaction of consequences that can take weeks, months, even years to fully unfold.
Yeah, it's like that old saying, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, right? Except with major news events, it's more like a million little reactions that we could never predict in advance.
A million little reactions, exactly. And think about something like the Arab Spring uprisings. I mean, initially it seemed like this clear-cut victory for democracy, right?
Yeah.
But the long-term effects, far messier.
Right. A lot of those countries, they ended up facing political instability, conflict. It was so much more complicated than what we saw in those early days.
Yeah. And, you know, on top of all of that, you also have to factor in the unpredictability of human behavior, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we like to think of ourselves as rational beings, but when it comes to big emotional events, let's just say logic doesn't always win out.
Oh, tell me about it. We've all been there. You know, whether it's something huge playing out on the world stage or even just something happening in our own lives, relationships, work stuff, that initial gut reaction can be so powerful, but so often it leads us astray, doesn't it?
You really can. We're emotional creatures at our core.
We are. So then for everyone listening, what can we actually do about this? How do we become more mindful, more discerning about the way we take in and process these major news events?
Well, it's a skill, right? And like any skill, it takes practice.
Uh-huh.
One of the biggest things, I think, is just learning to be patient, to resist that urge to have all the answers right away.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to sit with uncertainty for a bit, you know?
Yeah, let the dust settle a little.
Exactly. Give it time, and in the meantime, engage that critical thinking. Don't just accept the first version of the story you hear. Dig deeper. Seek out diverse perspectives, you know?
Question everything, I always say.
Yes. Question everything. Look at who's presenting the information, what their biases might be, that kind of thing.
And remember, this is a big one. The true impact of an event. It often takes a long time to fully materialize.
It really does. It's not always a straight line from A to B, right?
Yeah.
There are going to be twists and turns along the way, surprises.
Always surprises. So, until next time, everyone, stay curious, stay informed, and maybe, just maybe, stay a tiny bit skeptical. You never know what you might learn.